A few folks have asked about my terminal and coding setup, and so in this video, I'm going to walk you through what I use on a daily basis to do my job as a software engineer. There's nothing really particularly fancy here. In fact, one thing I'm going to emphasize is that I've chosen a lot of these tools because of their simplicity. But let's walk through and take a look at what I use. Before we dive into it, don't worry about keeping track of any of the tools or apps I'm talking about here. I will have a blog post where all of that is documented so you can check that out when you're done. But for now, let's dive into this. And we're going to start with the terminal itself. I use a terminal emulator called Alacritty. Now, I used to use iTerm2 and I switched to Alacritty a couple of years ago just to give this a try, just to try something different. And I've really loved it. One of the main reasons I've chosen Alacritty is because it's incredibly simple to configure. I have a simple text file here, which is all of the configuration for this. And that means I can easily commit it in my dot files and I can easily use it on other machines. A couple of interesting things in this configuration. I have window decoration set to none. So this means I don't have any like operating system Chrome. What you're seeing right now on screen, I know I have my screen cropped to just show this window, but this is the whole window. There's no like borders or anything that I'm cropping out in my video editing process. I'm using the monospace font hack. I'm using the nerd font variety, which means that I get some of these cool icons and extra characters as part of the font. And so that's useful both in my prompt, we'll talk about Starship in a sec, and then also in Vim here. Other interesting things, you can create your own color schemes or find them online for Alacritty. Pretty straightforward here. I'm using Tokyo Night. Again, both for Alacritty and for Vim. One other thing about Alacritty that I find kind of interesting, it's super bare bones, and that means that also it doesn't come with any key bindings of its own. So you have to define these yourself. I've kind of gone with some basic macOS keyboard shortcuts for some common things. So Command N gets me a new instance, Command Q or Command W quits this instance, and Command F toggles full screen. After Alacritty, we can talk about ZSH, which is the shell I use. I'm not using any shell frameworks or config sets like Oh My ZSH or anything like that. It's just a pretty standard ZSH shell. I talked about how I have ZSH set up in my dot files video, so you can check that out. I also use a lot of aliases when I'm working on the command line. And so if you're interested in some of my top aliases, you can check out another video I have where I talked about those. Now there's also the prompt I use here, which has pretty much the standard information. You've got the directory I'm in, you've got some Git information here. In my case, the version of Node, because I'm using that a lot. The time, you can see that I've got some tasks backgrounded. This, of course, is Starship, and I've done two videos on Starship. One just about setting up the prompt in general, and a second on how to create your own custom modules to show the information that you want to see on your prompt. Again, Starship is another tool that I've chosen because of the simplicity of the configuration and the ease to use this between multiple machines. Unlike Powerline or some of the other choices that you might use for creating a prompt, Starship uses a simple plain text config file, and this is a TOML file, really easy to understand, really easy to edit, and as I said, really portable. So that's why I choose Starship to create my prompt. Now, obviously I have a bunch of command line tools installed, mostly through Homebrew, of course, because I'm on a Mac, but there are two utilities that I use within the shell almost every day, almost all day long, and that is, first of all, Z. Now, Z, this is a tool for jumping around between directories. It's kind of like the CD or change directory command, except it learns what directories you move to often and will quickly jump you there with just a few characters. So, for example, if I go back to my home directory here, I can do Z dot, and it knows that I'm trying to go to my dot files directory. If I do ZSH, it knows I'm trying to go to shaky.sh, which is my blog directory. If I do ZADV, it jumps me into my Advent of Code directory where I've been recently. Looks like I spent a lot of time on day 9, and so it actually jumps me deep into day 9 there. And the idea is that Z is supposed to learn over time where you want to go. And so it will take you there quickly and easily. Now, the other command line tool that I use all the time is FZF or Fuzzy Finder. Fuzzy Finder has tons of capabilities, tons of really powerful ways you can use it, integrating it with other tools. I mainly use it for the history search. So when you install FZF, you get the history search installed for you. It overwrites the default Control R history search. And so all I'm doing to bring that up is I'm hitting Control R. And now what I can do is start typing the command that I want to run, or a command that I think I've run in the past, and it will actually filter that in my history and find it. So maybe I've run sed somewhere in the past and I want to find the sed command that I'm looking for. And now it's showing me all of the commands I've run in the past where I use sed. Maybe I want to filter this even more and say, I think there was one where I used both sed and grep. and maybe this is the one I'm looking for. And so I can find something from my history, and then maybe I want to modify this in some way, take out one of the greps, one of the sorts, and I'm not actually going to run that, but this is, I think, a great tool that I use all the time. And having a command line history search tool like this makes it incredibly easy to both run commands you've run in the past, but also just find ways that you have used commands in the past, kind of like a simple documentation lookup for the ways that you want to use it. The last big tool, of course, that I think you all know that I use is Vim. More specifically, I'm using neovim, which is just a modern rewrite of Vim that's much faster, has some better tooling, and even more specifically than that, I am using lunarvim. Now, lunarvim is an opinionated config set for neovim. It's kind of like a built-in config and a bunch of plugins, and I've been using lunarvim for coming up to a year now, maybe 9 or 10 months, and it's been incredibly helpful. In the past, I've managed my own vib config for all kinds of plugins that ultimately ended up looking and acting a lot like lunarvim, and so this is why it's kind of a good fit for me. I don't have to think about managing the plugins. lunarvim manages that for me. Now, in the past, that was definitely something I had a lot of fun doing. Playing with terminal or Vim configuration was kind of my main form of procrastination. So if you like managing your own configs, this is definitely not a dunk on that. But I'm at a place right now where managing Vim configs is not my idea of a fun time. And so having lunarvim to manage 99% of it and just having this simple config file on top of that makes me much happier. For the most part, I'm just using the built-in configuration with a couple of extra plugins, but for the most part, it's stock lunarvim. So that is the core set of tools that I'm using to do my job as a programmer every single day. Like I've mentioned, I've chosen a lot of these files because they're easy to configure via text files, and those configurations are inherently easy to share between multiple machines. So whether I'm working on my home machine here, my work laptop, my home server, or another laptop I left at my parents', it's easy to have the same set of tools and configuration, and I can work the way I'm used to working and be productive quickly. So that's the set of tools that I use on a daily basis. If you have tools that you love and think might be a good fit for me, or you just want to share, definitely put those down in the comments. Like I mentioned, I'll have a list of all of these things and links to where you can learn more about them on my blog. So see the link in the description for that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.